What up, y'all? Appreciate you showing up, hanging out, listening to my dumb ass, like and subscribe. So, more on the leak, basically. Actually, I just wanted to I want to talk about something in particular, which is the release date of the next Xbox. I know I was listening to a video Destin was talking about today. He was going through it in depth more about this, that, and third, and how Phil Spencer was talking about, oh, I'm so sad that the thing got leaked and stuff, or disappointed, or whatever he said. I can't remember. And that, like I said before, is kind of, a lot of it was old, so their plans have evolved, if you will. Anyway, the launch. So in the documentation, they said the launch is 2028. Now, remember, I posited that this could be a trick on Microsoft's part. That there's a lot of information, so I doubt it is, but think about it this way. Imagine that Phil Spencer is this clever, this devious, that he would create this whole scenario, this whole ruse that, oh snap, we accidentally uploaded the unredacted, slides and stuff for our plans for the next 7 years. Oh, oops, right? I mean, that's really careless. It's never happened before in the history of histories, basically. But of course, they haven't been in courts like this before either. So, but imagine that, right? So all this information is out. Sony's like, oh wow, we got all this information. Now we can adjust our plans accordingly based on their information. But if Microsoft is playing them like they had before, and they've done something like this in the past, not as crazy, not as elaborate, if this is a scheme, but they would force Sony to make some moves that would be not so wise based off of the false information that they're getting from these leaks. Now, some of it might be true, some of it was true, but it's if this is all kind of like a super giant espionage master plan, which I don't think it is, but just humor me for a second. How crazy would that be? Where Microsoft, like Xbox, is like, yeah, we're gonna, this, that, and the third, and then boom, oh yeah, we're changing. We have this other top secret thing we're working on, that only a couple people know about. And they haven't discussed it yet. This was a May 22nd, I think these were. But anyway, that's okay, whatever. Anyway, let's talk about the actual release date, according to these leaks. So 2028, I would assume November. That's when they usually launch. So 2028, new Xbox. That's all right. That's cool. That seems right. It actually is actually short if you take into account the whole COVID delay stuff, where that was like basically 2 years of delay. So that's really a 6-year cycle. So it's not that much time, but you can't really ignore those 2 years, even though it delayed the progress of these games. All it did was kind of compound the schedule for these games. So yeah, the games were delayed, but the games that were further out weren't necessarily affected. Everything was affected, but it pushed it back and it compounded. That's why this year, 2023, is so chock full of games, because it was all the games that were delayed from last year, plus everything else that really wasn't. Because some games weren't delayed; they were just whatever. But that's not the interesting part. That's not the part that's like, oh wow, 2028. No. What's Sony gonna do? That doesn't matter. It does matter, but it doesn't matter. What I think the most important part, the most interesting part, is the switch from AMD to ARM architecture when it comes to the CPU, APU, GPU, whatever. I don't know how that works, but that's interesting, because if they're putting an ARM chip in their next Xbox, which on one side it makes sense, because it's like, okay, they're smaller chips. I would assume they're generally cheaper. Maybe not. I don't know how all that works out, how the math works out on those dies, but look at it this way. ARM chips are in all the phones, all tablets, and the Nintendo Switch. So, if you think about it, assuming that Microsoft still wants to deal with Nintendo like that, remember, this is just all hypothetical theories. This is nothing real. But anyway, assuming Microsoft still wants to mess with Nintendo, they make their next console basically compatible, easy. You can put your games on our so easy. It's basically a bigger, more powerful Switch 2. Come on, Nintendo. Give them some money. Come on, Nintendo. Put Mario on Xbox. Let's go. Now, I don't know what the performance advantages would be for them to switch to ARM. But I think that if you look at it in terms of them having the ability to have one ubiquitous kind of chipset for their APIs, for their mobile and console games, which is what they're kind of positioning because of the APK deal. They're going to get Blizzard, they're going to get Activision, they're going to get King. And so if they say, okay, our home console and the phones and the tablets and all these things and the Nintendo Switch are all easily utilized, easily coded for, because we're all on the same architecture, all ARM architecture. Of course, the ARM architecture for the console would be specific, bespoke, and specifically constructed for console use. So I don't know what that means. But also what it does mean is that they could do something in kind of like a way like what Nintendo's doing, basically. They could make a hybrid console. Now, the language of hybrid was in those documentations, but they also tacked on cloud and hardware, native salute or whatever. So the assumption is that they're talking about hardware in the home plus cloud as the hybrid. But if they're doing ARM and hybrid, and if you take the cloud, you put it aside a second, and you say, oh, that's what the Nintendo Switch is. It's a hybrid console. So is Microsoft planning to make a Switch competitor, basically? An Xbox Switch? Think about it. How smart would it be if they do switch to ARM, right? And they say, yeah, we can make a nice little tiny bitty tiny console, and it'd be super powerful, because the new Switch is going to be basically a PlayStation 4, Xbox One. Those were huge. So you imagine a Switch pretty small, as powerful as one of those big machines. So I think Xbox could figure it out how to make a pretty beefy console in a small. Actually, you know what? They would make two versions like they're doing now with the Xbox Series S and the Series X. So they would say, okay, the handheld is the S basically, and the big fat juicy powerful one is the X for home. It works the same, except it's better because it's the same kind of setup for the devs. They're used to it, so it's not like they're gonna complain. They would complain because whatever, they're probably fanboys. But what this also does is it creates an island around Sony and PlayStation. What this does is that it makes it so that Sony would be the only one using the x84 architecture, not the x64 or whatever it is on the ARM 64. But so now Sony would be the odd man out, meaning Xbox would be on ARM, Nintendo Switch would be on ARM, all the phones, all the tablets would be on ARM. The only thing that Sony would have in common would be PC. And those aren't exactly, easy to just, we're just gonna throw it on PC because it's on PlayStation. No, it's work. It's work because Sony's got this proprietary, super fast, this and that and the third, and they have to accommodate for that. So now if you're a dev and you're like, well, we could make it once for ARM, and it'd be easy to put it on the Switch, on the Xbox, on phones. Apple's getting in the game, but I know their chipset is not ARM. I don't think it is. They have their own chips, A something. So whatever, but still, I think it would probably be easier to go to from ARM to whatever Apple's is versus ARM to AMD, x84, x86. Wow. But I think that's one of the more interesting aspects of this leak. It's the technology changeover, if it's true. I mean, it could be not true and they'll do AMD again, but they've been lacking behind. AMD's been dragging their feet on the ray tracing and all this stuff. But if Microsoft can go ARM and do their own hardware solutions as far as ray tracing and all that stuff, and make it easy for devs, just use the slider in the GUI, in the UI, or the XD, whatever the developer UI, DUI. I don't know. No, that's not right. Anyway, if they do that, and if they make it super simple for devs to make games like that, then it's all good. I think like the Xbox Series X is super powerful. It is the most powerful console. The problem with it is that there are a lot of different systems and bespoke features that are not present in the PlayStation in PCs. So it's very specific, like the mesh shader and the velocity architecture, all these things. It's only for Xbox, and for developers to utilize that, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes knowledge for them to learn how to use that stuff. So all the first party games are gonna utilize that stuff, and they're gonna look super great. Just look at Starfield. I mean, Starfield, and sometimes Starfield's like, I see it. But sometimes I'm like, that's Starfield? I'm playing on an S, and I'm like, yo, this game looks, they've done something. It's crazy. I think it's the FSR2, FSR? Did I say it right? That's really working, because there's some instances where I see super jackies. I'm like, whoa, it must be broken. And sometimes I'm like, whoa, that's real smooth. But anyway, tangent. But yeah, this ARM stuff is super interesting, and I guess I have to do a little bit more research on the actual performance, the performance of ARM when it comes to, like, I guess Unreal 5 and all these other things. I would assume it's not that. I mean, look. The Switch is using ARM, okay? The Switch is old as dirt, so and the thing about Nintendo, when they make a system, they're gonna make it so that they make money. So they're not gonna do super duper duper most powerful. But Xbox will. Xbox will put that money in. They'll do the work. They'll do the research, and they'll put that money in order to get a super powerful ARM, SoC. So, and I don't know if they are. I guess they are APUs. I would assume, because they're in your phones and stuff. So yeah. So, and the thing about this, I mean, it might sound strange. Like, why would they do it? The PS4 generation and the Xbox One generation were basically mobile chips as well. They were underpowered when they came out, so that's why that whole generation was a little weird. But it's the same thing, except for, the power being not outdated when it comes out. That's the key thing. And I will assume or guess that they're trying to line up the 2028 with some sort of, not milestone, but as these new ARM chips come out with new specs and new features, then that's when you come out with stuff. So I don't know. It's just a little interesting little tidbit that I got from that whole leak stuff. Besides all the drama and this, that, and the third, the little details that I'm seeing, I'm like, well, wait, this is a big deal. This ARM stuff. So, we'll see what happens. And we'll see what the devs do. Because, I mean, think about it. There are a lot of cell phone games. I mean, yes, they're not that great because A, they're on phone, and B, a lot of the phones aren't powerful enough to really push it. So the games are like, and a lot of people don't give phone games that much credit. I think it's more of a stigma than actual performance. But if you make an ARM chip, an SoC capable, then it could run Call of Duty mobile, if you will, in a way that is like comparable to what consoles will be or should be. So, I don't know. I think that 2028 is 5 years from now. So, and last thing, people, D-Batch. I got a problem with D-Batch. D-Batch is like a knucklehead. He's a big time YouTuber. He's a YouTuber, and he's on all the shows and stuff. But the point, I listened to his show, and he was going through the thing. He was going through the leak and stuff, and he was like, "It's a big mistake for them to not have an answer to the PlayStation 5." He's Canadian. I can't do it, and he's kind of like a power whore, if that makes sense. It's like, oh, you gotta go toe for toe, and I'm like, no. He's not even taking into account the developers. The reason why developers hate working on Xbox is because they have to do more work. Because Microsoft says you gotta make it for the X and you gotta make it for the S. That's double work. Well, it's not double work, but it's more work than just doing it for one SoC, which is what PlayStation has. They have one console, one version that you need to make for PlayStation, and that's why devs are like, we do it there, let's go. But he's just so stuck on match for match. Like, yeah, you gotta come with and I'm like, no, you don't. The Switch is killing it. The Switch is selling so many freaking consoles. It's ridiculous. It's probably gonna be 10 years old before it's old. It's 2023, 2024. It's gonna be 7 years old. And you're sitting here talking, oh, you gotta go, I don't know. You gotta go toe for toe. You gotta, why don't you have an answer? Nintendo, why don't you have an answer to the PlayStation 5, Nintendo? They don't need an answer. You need a product that people want to buy, period. And some people would buy a Xbox Series XX or whatever, but they don't need to make it because they're about to prove how powerful the Xbox is. Because I'm looking at Starfield and I know Bethesda. I'm on an S, remember, and I know Bethesda, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, there's no way in the hells that this game should look like this. Yes, they had a lot of time to polish it, make it look beautiful and stuff, but they're doing some magic on this $250 console that I bought. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, yo, this is almost as good as like Xbox One X, which was 4K, or Series X, I will assume. Yeah, so I'm like, and I'm gonna get the new X, the 2 terabyte cylinder X, the Bazooka X. I'm getting that. But now when they do the thumbnail with Phil, they could actually put the round one. Anyway, let me know what y'all think about this whole AMD stuff. They're gonna switch architectures, switch chipsets, switch SoCs, leave AMD in the dust, or maybe do ARM and partner with AMD to do some kind of bespoke technology that is still kind of capable and compatible with, let's say, whatever Nintendo's doing next, I think that's one of the main things, plus the mobile stuff, but I think that's one of the main things. They're trying to get their hardware to just be easy to make for everything, and it makes sense. But anyway, let me know what y'all think. Hit me up in the comments below, and I'll talk to y'all on the next one. Till the wait.